Okay, great. We are live with this installment of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. My name is Travis Steffens, and I'm the director of an organization called Planet Madagascar. What we do is we look at conservation solutions to help people in Madagascar live healthier and happier lives, while also looking at how to protect lemurs in their habitat. So what I'm going to do for this talk is I've got a series of photos and slides and some video from my work in Madagascar since 2007, so I've been doing a lot of work there. And I'm going to share with you just kind of how amazing Madagascar is. So bear with me as I share my screen here. Hopefully this works out. And let's see here, it should work now. So you should be seeing a picture of a lemur. I can hear two classes. Do you guys see that lemur?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, well here we go. So, like I said, my name is Travis Steffens. So I'm the founding director of this organization, but I'm also a person of many hats. And so I am doing my PhD at the University of Toronto. I'm a member of the IUCN Species Specialist Group, helping determine sort of the species status for lemurs. I'm a fellow of the Explorers Club. I'm also a trip leader, so I've taken people on trips around the world, including Central America, down into Belize mostly, and Costa Rica, but also in Southern Africa, Madagascar, and even as far away as Russia. So you can follow me on Twitter if you are interested in seeing some of those travels. Otherwise, today, let's go on a little journey, and my home right now is Toronto. We're going to take a little journey from Toronto to Madagascar. Madagascar is on the exact opposite side of the world. It is in the southeast corner of off the continent of Africa. It is the fourth largest island in the world. So that makes it the size of Texas. It's massive. It has over 3,000 miles of coastline, so a big, big island. And it goes by many names. Some people call it the Lemur Island. Some people call it the Red Island. And some even call it the eighth continent because it's so unusual. And then recently they discovered that it might be on its own continental shelf, or an ancient continental shelf. So a really amazing country in the middle of nowhere. And if you look at this image, this is from Google Earth, you can see half of the country on the eastern side there is green, and then the rest of the country is brown.
We can't
well, that's because... Sorry?
Sorry, we can't see your screen anymore.
Oh, you can't see my screen. Okay, let me see if I can figure that out.
Oh, so you can't hear me.
Let me see here. There's probably a button somewhere. Let's try this again. I'll share my desktop. Okay, how about now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, and now how about now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so let's move past this. We're going back to Madagascar in here, and if you can see the image of Madagascar, Earth's rotated. It's mostly just green on the eastern side and then brown everywhere else, and that's because many of the forests in Madagascar have been cut down, but we'll talk about that later. When you go to Madagascar, you're presented with a lot of amazing different things. So we've got some incredible beaches. So just to double check, everyone's seeing a photo of a beach.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. They have cloud forests and rainforests. So cloud forests are rainforests that are at high altitudes. A lot of the moisture that trees they get their moisture from the air. So you get a lot of epiphytic species that get their moisture from the air. They also have tropical dry forests. So this is a tropical deciduous dry forest where most of the leaves will fall off in the dry season. Much like leaves in North America will fall off in winter, they do the same in Madagascar in this type of forest, but only during the dry season. There's a special type of forest called spiny dry forest. This is where all the trees in the forest have spines on them to protect them from different animals trying to eat the trees or trying to attack the trees. And this is a really unique formation called the Singi. And what we actually called the Devil's Obstacle Course. And this was an expedition I did exactly a year ago, last October. And we went into this Devil's Obstacle Course looking for lemurs, looking for caves, and trying to cross the entire section of this stuff called the Singi so that we can find some dinosaur footprints that were left in the rock. So I'll talk a little bit about that because that was actually quite cool, and it gives you a sense of how unusual and how far away Madagascar was, or is. So I flew all the way from Toronto. Takes 2 days to fly to Madagascar. You go through Paris, then down to Madagascar, and then once I got to the capital, Antananarivo, we hopped in 4x4s, loaded up in equipment, and crossed 3 days across the country to reach a small community nearby this area called the Singi. When we got there, we realized there was no roads to get where we wanted to go. So I got some motorbikes and we went and scouted the area. And then we brought in some villagers from the local communities and hired them to help us build roads and build ways across all the different rivers. So this was deep, deep, deep in the forest. We have 2 trucks. You can see one truck's up back in the foliage up at the top. And we crossed these rivers, and eventually we got to where we set up our camp. And me and the other expedition leaders went ahead of the team to go find a way through the Singi to find a route that we could all take so we could find these dinosaur footprints. Now what Singi is it looks like this at the top. It's just basically really sharp limestone. It's an ancient coral reef. And so there used to be a Great Barrier Reef like you see in Belize and in Australia that used to run along the coast of Madagascar. But over time and millennia really, this became exposed to the air. So there was a geologic uplift, and this got brought up, but the coral and limestone was still there, and it formed in this limestone formation, and they call that Singi. And Singi translates to where you cannot walk barefoot. And the reason is because it's so sharp. So this is razor sharp rock. In fact, my second step I took on this rock, I cut right through my boot into my foot. So it's very, very sharp rocks. And our goal was to get through this. Well, when you're walking on top of it, it's very difficult, but they have these cracks that you can follow that form different caves. And we were actually hoping to find and discover some caves when we were there. So what we did is instead of walking on top, sometimes we'd walk through the Singi, sometimes we'd walk underneath through caves, and sometimes we'd walk over. And all we wanted to do was a little 6-hour reconnaissance trying to find where a good route would be, because no one had been in this area before, and there was no satellite imagery to show us a route because the trees cover the top of the Singi, so you couldn't see it from satellite image. Well, after a little while, we ended up getting into a bit of trouble. We ended up running out of water and not being able to reach back to our camp in the same day. And the main reason was just that it was very difficult to cross this Singi. This stuff was so sharp and so difficult to cross, so it took a very long time. We were made up of, the 3 of us were either adventure athletes, there's 2 adventure athletes, and myself, who does a lot of expedition research. So this is quite hard. So we found ourselves partway through the Singi and realizing we couldn't go back. So we used some maps from the area from about 20, 30 years ago suggesting that there might be a trail out if we went another 20 kilometers in, so about 12 miles. And then crossed down to the south and then came back. It probably would have been a total of 30 miles altogether, but we figured that would be safer than walking through the Singi some more. Well, we did that, and unfortunately, we ended up running out of water. And here's Simon talking about our situation. This is a few days into our little trek that was supposed to be a few hours, and he's describing our predicament. So I'll play that for you. It might be loud, so just be careful.
Well, here we are, morning of day 2, and we had an unexpected night camping with no supplies. Our biggest concern though was running low on water, and we were basically out of water. We've spent the past few morning hours literally licking the dew off leaves. We pulled water out of tree well. We've just filled all of our bladders and water bottles with water that's preserved in these little limestone kettles. They're almost like mini ponds. They're full of tadpoles, and there's a bunch of zebu that have been grazing here. Evidence is everywhere, so we know that the water is contaminated. The risk we have to take, we treated it with chlorine pills. We've been extra diligent and added more chlorine than recommended. So hopefully that keeps us from getting sick, but having some kind of water keeps us from getting dead. That's more important.
So at this point, we actually were a little worried. Fortunately, I had studied lemurs for years, and I knew that even in these very dry areas that there is access to water. So we were able to, as Simon mentioned, lick the dew off leaves in the morning. We found holes with water in it. We even cut into bamboo looking for water, which there was some in each of the bamboo stalks we cut. But we ended up drinking most of our water from a pile of water filled with cattle dung. We had water treatment with us, which was great, but we didn't have a real way to filter the flavor out, so you can imagine it didn't taste good. This is what the water looked like. So this was, to us, this was an oasis after a few days in the bush in Madagascar. So we drank from that water, and it tastes as bad as it looks. It smelled horrible. And we ended up realizing that it was impossible for us to get ourselves out without a high level of risk. We could easily just continue walking and continue going, but if we had to encounter that singy again, that razor-sharp rock, if one of us fell, we'd be in a lot of trouble. By this point, we're starting to get a bit weak, and we're starting to get quite tired. Because you got to remember, this is a few days without water, and also a few days without food. And the only water we have isn't very good. And this gentleman here, he's actually one of the world's best adventure athletes, and he was getting quite ill from the chlorine we put in the water. So we ended up calling a helicopter to pick us up. It took them a while because they don't have many helicopters in Madagascar. Actually, it took them a whole other day. And they collected us and brought us back to our camp. Now, we thought maybe that meant the end of our project. We were done. We weren't going to discover all the stuff we wanted to do. But fortunately, we had a medic in our camp. He plugged me into an IV. I ended up losing 12 pounds in those 3 days. But he plugged me into an IV, got my fluids going, and the next day we went back out into the Singi, but this time focusing our route in an area closer to our camp. We ended up discovering one of the largest caves in Madagascar, lots of different lemurs, some archaeological artifacts, and eventually the team ended up discovering a dinosaur migration route. And so we ended up seeing it all. I don't have a lot of photos of the rest of it, but just give you a photo of the size of the cave that we discovered. So this is just a small entrance into one of the caves, into the biggest cave we found. This cave goes over 1.5 miles in length. So it was a huge cave that we found. It was one that it's probably the 35th largest in Madagascar. So it doesn't sound big, but Madagascar has massive, massive caves in their country. So it was a great cave. We went and explored inside and around through underground rivers and potentially found some new species. Hopefully some scientists will be able to come in and check that out. But I think that gives you a sense of how remote Madagascar is and how unique the country is and how much there is to learn about it. Well, when you think of Madagascar, usually you think of these things. You think of lemurs. Well, I'll talk about lemurs in a moment, but let's talk about some other stuff. This leaf here is a leaf with an eggs of an insect on the bottom. So this is a small little leaf, about about the size of my palm. And so when these eggs hatch, they turn into this organism. This is a group of insects clumped together, and they look a lot like a flower or something like that. But here's what they look like up close. This is what I call something that looks like a Martian wearing a shredded wedding dress. These tiny little creatures have these fuzzy things on the back, and they have them so that if a predator bites them, they get a mouthful of sticky, fuzzy stuff. And what's really crazy is they live on one tree, and they eat the nectar of that tree, and they stay in one spot in a group just like this. And they'll actually go to the bathroom and poop a white wax. And this wax is mostly made up of sugar. And what's really incredible is that lemurs will visit the group every evening and eat their poop. So there's actually a lemur that eats insect poop. Pretty gross, but it's the way it is. And so this is what they look like, but they will actually hatch into something else. So a lot like a caterpillar turns into a butterfly, these tiny little insects will turn into beautiful red leaf bugs. I'll show you that now. So here's one hatching out. If you look at the yellow eye on the previous one, you see it continues on, and then this is what they look like, fully grown as adults. And now they'll fly away, and they'll find a mate and start the whole thing over again. So really, really cool bugs called leaf-flatted insects. So that's incredible. We can all agree Madagascar has some amazing stuff, and those are really cool. What about this next one? This one blew my mind. This is a web-throwing spider. So unlike a normal spider that makes a web across a space, between two branches or in your doorway, This one will actually make an intricate net. And what it does, it pulls it really tight towards its body, and you can see some guy lines stuck to a branch below. And when an insect comes past, it throws the net at the insect, catches it in the air, and then reels it in like a fisherman. They call them web-throwing spiders. Super cool. And the next one, I think, is even more incredible. So you've seen web-throwing spiders, we've seen leaf-flatted insects. What about a giraffe-necked beetle? This amazing beetle has this really, really long neck, and it lives on one particular plant species in Madagascar. And the necks are important because the males have long necks, but the females don't. And you might wonder why. Well, in this case, females choose mates that have really long necks, and so the males try to grow long necks, and so it's a sort of an adaptation to trying to look good for mates. Other species will do something similar, like antlers in some species, and some primates it might be growing larger or having different colors, things like that. So they actually grow these long necks. The females have much shorter necks. And these are actually a type of beetle, and they can fly as well. They're very, very small. They would fit just on your thumb. They're really, really tiny. Okay, so those are all pretty cool. Well, I'm going to show you a quick little video of something even more spectacular. This is a special animal that is virtually invisible when you see it in the forest. So take a look at this video and see if you can find it, and I'll show you afterwards.
Continuing in Mitsinju National Park, Pierre spotted a leaf-tailed gecko. It's one of the hardest species to find in Madagascar. It took me almost 2 minutes before I saw it. It's an amazing creature. It perfectly blends in with the surroundings. It's one of the most cryptic animals in the entire country, one of the most cryptic animals in the world. And it's one of the neat things that you can come see when you visit Madagascar. It's no wonder they call it the 8th continent, the wonder of the world.
Okay, so let me show you a photo of it. Okay, so I'm not sure you can see I'm going to get out of the screen for a moment. Can you see my mouse? Yes. If you look past my chin, that's the nose right there of the gecko. There's the foot just on the side, and then up at the top is the back legs. It's the size of my head. It's huge. Did everyone see that?
No.
No? Yes, maybe. So basically, the bottom of my chin is where the nose is on that stick to what would be your left. And then at the top there is the feet, right by my hairline. And then the whole body is the same color as the tree. But if you didn't see that, that's okay, because you'll see it in the next photo. This is what the same species. This is what it looks like up close. The next little thing is called a leaf-tailed gecko. So they call them that obviously because their tails look just like leaves, and they hang close to tree bark so they're invisible when they want to hide. Here's another species that I really like, and it's called a satanic leaf-tailed gecko because of the horns above its eyes. So this one is different. This one pretends it's a dead leaf, so it hangs off the tree waiting for insects to come. It's easy for you to see because I use my flash, but normally they're actually quite difficult to see. And so the next one is something other than a gecko, but you'll be familiar with it. This is a chameleon. And Madagascar has over 150 different species of chameleon. And that's over half of the world's chameleons are just in Madagascar. And of course, you know all about chameleons. You know they're special because they change color. You know they're special because their tongue they can extend their tongue outside of their body quite far. And you know that their eyes can point in different directions. So you can see that in some of these photos. So here's one with its eyes forward. This one is the Parsons chameleon. The next one here is a rhinoceros chameleon with a tiny little nose horn, eyes starting to look backwards. The next one here is actually a tiny chameleon called a Bruchisia species, or microchameleon, and the one in the bottom right is the smallest lizard ever found. And that was discovered in 2012. So that's the smallest chameleon in the world and the smallest lizard. That is a full-grown male chameleon on top of a matchstick. It's incredible. Well, those are pretty cool, but this next one I love a lot. That rhinoceros chameleon has an awesome nose. This incredible chameleon lived in my camp, so every night he would see me. He would be going to bed as I was waking up, because I would wake up at night to go search for lemurs. And so whenever I would wake up, he would see me, and he was embarrassed for me because my nose is nowhere near as cool as this guy. So he was ashamed that I had such a small nose. And I'll show you one more chameleon photo, and then, or sorry, video. And this is what they do with their tongue. So watch this.
What the? Whoa.
Let's watch that again because it's pretty incredible. So we see our friend with the funny nose. This is the next video. It's a panther chameleon, one of the largest chameleons in the world, throwing its tongue to get some food. That's amazing. That's incredible. Well, so there's tons of different amazing things in Madagascar, including birds. There's over 400 species of birds in Madagascar, and half of them are endemic to Madagascar. And what that means is that they're only found in Madagascar. So that's what endemic means, only found to one area. So they're unique to Madagascar. This one I call the Lady Gaga bird with the awesome eyeshadow. But it's also known as the crested kua. Only found in Madagascar. The next ones here on the top left, you see a forest foodie. The top right is a Madagascar kingfisher. The bottom left is a family of birds only found in Madagascar. They're related to shrikes, and they're called vongas. And this one is called a sickle-billed vonga. And then the bottom right is a Madagascar fish eagle, which is very similar to the American bald eagle, and does the same thing. Fishes in lakes and rivers, and lives on the western side of Madagascar. Quite a cool species. Very rare as well. So lots of birds in Madagascar, lots of cool things. But when you think of Madagascar, you probably think of lemurs. And if you're lucky and get a chance to see the Lemur IMAX film that's been out for about a year now, I highly recommend it. If you see that film, you'll see this lemur in it. This is a black and white rough lemur. And usually they live high up in the canopy, so they're actually very hard to find. But this one is at a sanctuary for old pets. Beautiful lemur, really, really cool. This one's looking for a banana in my camera, but it didn't have one, so it left me alone. But she's a cool lemur. If you get a chance to go to Madagascar, you can actually meet this lemur. This is a ring-tailed lemur. You've probably heard of them. They're often found in zoos. This is King Julian from the Madagascar movies. That movie got it wrong. You see, King Julian is not accurate. Lemurs are female dominant, so there would never be a King Julian. It would have to be a Queen Juliet. And the females are much more aggressive and much stronger than the males. The ring-tailed lemurs are actually very clever and very smart. They have multiple different calls. They probably have more different distinct calls than any other non-human primate. That includes chimpanzees and capuchin monkeys. So there's lots of different calls that these guys make, including barks and meows and chuffs and all sorts of sounds that we've even named just to describe their sounds. And so they're super cool. They're called ring-tailed lemurs. This is a tiny lemur, in fact, the smallest primate in the world. It's called a mouse lemur. These tiny little lemurs, you can see those are some bananas. Those are smaller than normal bananas. They're very, very tiny, and they're actually fawny frugivores. They're species that eat both vegetation and meat. In this case, they're eating insects. So they like to eat a lot of insects, but they also eat fruits and nectars. And in fact, the one in the bottom left, the golden mouse lemur, golden brown mouse lemur, would visit my camp and eat one bite of every one of my bananas every day. So it spent a lot of effort trying to protect my bananas from these creatures. Now, next up is a sportive lemur. These cool lemurs have giant eyes, and they use these to see at night. Just like the mouse lemurs that come out at night, they use these eyes to see at night. And they can actually jump between trees, making massive leaps. And during the day, they hide in tree holes, trying to hide away from raptors or birds that hunt animals. There's many that eat lemurs. Sometimes they'll be hiding from snakes or even hiding from fusa, which is a carnivore in Madagascar. It's related to a mongoose. And when they get really scared, they'll hide inside their tree hole, just like this. And so they'll disappear inside their tree hole, and then you won't be able to see them because they're hiding high up in the tree. Now, fortunately, this one was hiding quite low, so I was able to find them. I knew where it lived, and so it was unhappy to see me push my camera down the hole. But I wanted to show you what it was like to see these guys in their habitat. These are brown lemurs called common brown lemurs. I've caught him red-handed here stealing some fruit. They're doing what they do best. They eat lots and lots of fruit. They swallow the fruits and the seeds, and then they'll eventually poop out those seeds somewhere else in the forest. And this is a type of seed dispersal that's very important in Madagascar. And so they'll eat the fruits in one place but drop the seeds in a new place. And hopefully that place is better for germinating the seeds, and then a new tree can form. And it's argued that these species, amongst other lemurs, help maintain and in fact increase the biodiversity of forest in Madagascar. So they're called common brown lemurs. The next is probably the most adorable lemur altogether, and that is the bamboo lemur. And this lemur is really cool because it eats only bamboo. So it'll sit all day long chewing on bamboo leaves, especially bamboo leaves that are high in cyanide. So just like panda bears, they only eat one thing, and they can specialize in eating it because they have somehow evolved the ability to digest cyanide, which is incredible because the amount of food they consume would actually kill us in terms of cyanide. It's amazing, and they're adorable. This is my favorite and the one I spent many years studying. And this is, you might recognize it as Zaboomafoo. It was a lemur TV show from the Duke Lemur Center. But this is the wild cousin of Zaboomafoo, and it's called a Coquerel's shafaka. And they can make massive leaps between trees. And they live outside it during the day. And so they can make up to 8 to 10 meter leaps, depending on the species of shafaka. There's an injury that we're going to see in a moment that makes even bigger leaps. And that's about 25 to 30 feet from tree to tree. So that makes it the largest or furthest jumping animal in the world. They have massive, strong legs that help propel them through the air. And when they land, they don't just land, they can bounce from tree to tree like a ping pong ball down a set of stairs. They're really cool. Well, here's is the largest lemur left in Madagascar. It's called the injury. It's related to the shafakas. And you can see the huge legs there. This is the one that makes the largest jumps. But it's also known for another reason. It's known for the sounds that it makes. So the word lemur actually means spirits of the dead. And so this lemur can actually make massive calls. And when the first explorers came to Madagascar, they were astonished to hear the sounds that this lemur made. And so they thought that, man, there must be spirits living in the forest. And this is the loudest of all the lemurs and the second loudest of all the primates. So let's play a short little video. You can hear the sounds that this lemur makes. That was incredible. That's the sound. To me, it sounds like there's a trumpet stuck in the throat of a lemur. Just fantastic. Well, I think we can all agree that Madagascar is really cool. And before I continue on, I just want to talk a little bit about the issues happening in Madagascar. The main one, let me just get back to here, is the situation involving mostly people. Madagascar is burning. Much of the forests are burning and being cut down, mostly for people to grow food so that they can feed their families or to raise cattle. You can see the person on the left here is getting some rice ready for eating. Someone's burning some grass on the top so they can graze their cattle. And the problem with this is that the more you burn, the less likely the forest will grow back. You end up with these large areas of savanna. And you can see a small line where there's a sort of a crack in the ground there, and that's where some erosion has happened. And that erosion results in a situation like this, where eventually all that topsoil, all that red soil gets deposited into the nearest river, washes away and washes out to sea. And astronauts, when they fly over Madagascar, say it looks like Madagascar is bleeding. You can actually look that up online if you get a chance and see photos of that. And so this problem is big for people and for lemurs because this habitat's not very useful. You can't really grow a lot on the edges of these canyons. Hopefully at the bottom there's been some research showing that you can grow down there, but you're removing all the nutrients from this area and getting rid of it. So it's not good for lemurs and it's not good for people. And the problem in Madagascar, if you look at this map, the darkest brown colors are the poorest countries in the world. And Madagascar is one of the poorest. Over 80% of people live on less than $2 a day. But what is more important to me is that means 40% of children in Madagascar are malnourished. That means almost half the children in the country are not going with enough food. So obviously this is a big problem. So I saw all this cool stuff in Madagascar, all the lemurs, all the different birds, and I saw the problems that people are facing because I lived with the community members where I did my research in tiny villages in the middle of nowhere. So I decided I should start an organization to try to help these people help me protect lemurs, because without them, there was never going to be any solution to the problem with lemurs, and we needed their help, and they needed our help. And so I started an organization called Planet Madagascar. The top right photo, you can see our team. They're our fire management team. They go out. In fact, they're out right now looking for fires in the areas that we study and the areas that we're monitoring. And so that gives them a job. So this is one of the ideas where we find innovative solutions to help build capacity in their communities so they can help us do conservation. This is when I first met the team. This is after our research, after my research, and where I first got the team together to start Planet Madagascar. Eventually, I went to the southern part of the country to learn about how to bring latrines to some of the communities. In Madagascar, there's very little infrastructure. So there's no toilets, there's no sanitation. The water comes directly from the creek. There's no roads even to some communities. This community we had to walk in. I do education projects we call lambas for lemurs. Lambas are a type of cloth like sarong that they wear in Madagascar, and so each one of them usually has images of something special, and then it'll have a saying on the bottom. Well, we realized that they never actually considered lemurs to be special. To them, they're like squirrels or raccoons or sparrows, just things that they see every day. And when they realized that they were actually unique to Madagascar, they were very interested in that. And so we made lambas to show how unique lemurs were so we could raise awareness. The way I pay for my research and for our nonprofit is mostly through grants. Agencies like the Explorers Club, American Association of American Society of Primatologists, the same international version of that association, grants from the Government of Canada, and sometimes donations from individuals. It takes a lot of effort, though. A lot of people have helped plan these projects, and a lot of organizations help pay for them as well. And so for our research is mostly grants, and then for the nonprofit work is grants and donations and things like that. So I think we need a question from Mrs. Farouk's class, the grade.
Carla?
Yes, what?
Carla? Nobody else?
Nobody else.
Here comes Carla.
All right, Carla.
Hi. You mentioned that you were reaching out to the people of Madagascar in order to help them be more aware of the lemurs there. What other things did you do to convince them that it was worthwhile to save them?
That's a very good question, and I think actually that's probably the most important issue with regards to conservation is working with people in local communities. What often happens is people from places like Canada will go to places like Madagascar and tell them you have to protect your species because they're important. Well, meanwhile, I get to go home, I get to have my nice apartment with my nice things, and they still have to live there, and they still have to live their lives. And so we're trying to find ways to convince them that lemurs are important, but not because they're important just to me. They're trying to convince them because we're trying to show them how they're important to them. And mostly they're important as seed dispersers. In some places, ecotourism is important, so sometimes they're a source of revenue. If there's lemurs in forests, you can charge people to come see them from other parts of the world. And in some places, lemurs are sacred in Madagascar, so they're important culturally. So it's important for us to find out what they already think about lemurs in their area. In my area, they just didn't realize that lemurs were special, and so once they learned they were special, they were quite interested in protecting them on their own. But the problem for them was that they didn't have the time or money to protect them, so we had to find other solutions to help improve their lives. And that's a big struggle, trying to find these things that help people that we can use to help lemurs as well. Because at the end of the day, the people who are going to be there in the future, they have to protect it for themselves. And if they don't want to, it's their prerogative. So we have to find solutions that work with them. I think we have Mrs. Mack's class.
Because he talked about the helper.
Right. How does the giraffe neck beetle grow its own neck?
Okay, that's a good question. How does it grow its own neck? Well, I maybe was a bit misleading. What it does is it's already, you know, it's going to have as long a neck as its genes allow it, and so the neck evolved as they call this a type of selection where there's a pressure from a mate. The mate likes a particular feature in the other animal or in the other sex, and so they end up growing larger necks. But in this case, to sort of support this desire by the other mate. And you'll see this in certain animals as well. I think I mentioned, you know, you see some animals that have antlers and other animals that don't. Well, this is a selection pressure where one individual has it, but the other sex doesn't. And so they don't try to grow their necks longer. Their necks just grow that length, if that makes sense. We could go back through if you have more time. I can take another question from each, and then if there's time after that, we can do more. But again, from the Mr. Huebner's class, maybe we can take another question.
Yeah, we got one more. About time for one more. All right.
Great.
What adaptations do the lemurs have to survive in order to survive?
That's a good question. I'll try to keep the answer short because there's so many different adaptations. Because you have 103 different species, everything from small little mouse lemurs all the way up to big injuries. So even that song that the one made, that trumpety throaty call that the one made, that's an adaptation. They have a fat finger, so there's on their fingers they have pads, and that's so that when they land on trees, they can grasp it easily. Some have what they call a tooth comb, so their bottom and sides are stick out like this. It allows them to comb their own fur. Their ability to leap is an amazing adaptation. Some species are diurnal, meaning they're daytime animals. Some are nocturnal. And there's even a different species that's only typically found in lemurs, and it's called cathemeral, meaning they switch from being daytime and nighttime animals. And then finally, I'll show you one more adaptation is that many lemurs have scent glands, and on ringtail lemurs, they actually have scent glands inside their wrists. And what they do is they'll actually rub their tails with it, and then they'll throw their tails in the air, and they'll have a fight with another lemur, and it's called stink fighting. And so many lemurs have scent glands, some on their wrists, some on their chest, some near their backside. So that's another adaptation lemurs have. There's many different ones, and in fact, there's more than I've even described. They're a very diverse group of animals. If anyone needs to sign off, feel free, but I can take a question from Mr. Sinclair and Mr. Hickey's class again, another one from each. think that might be it. Oh, here we go. You got your. There we go.
Does Madagascar have monkeys, apes, and gorillas?
Ooh, a good question. So does Madagascar have monkeys, apes, and gorillas? Well, when you look at all primates, you have apes, which gorillas are a type of ape, and in fact humans are a type of ape. You have monkeys, and you have, which, of course, you recognize they're going to usually have a tail, and they jump around in the trees. And then you have something that they used to call prosimians, or we call strepsirrhines. What that means is they have wet noses, so we call them the wet-nosed primates. And those are lemurs, galagos, and lorises. And they are found throughout the world, but in so you'll find galagos in Africa, you'll find lorises in Asia, and then you find lemurs in Madagascar. So in Madagascar, there's no other primate. There's only lemurs, and there's no lemurs found outside of Madagascar. So there's no monkeys, and there's no apes inside Madagascar, just lemurs. All right.
We just wanted to thank you, Mr. Sinclair, Mr. Hickey, we just wanted to thank you. We need to jump off, but thank you very much for your time. You guys want to say a quick thank you?
Wonderful. Thank you. I think we have one more class left here. The rest have signed off. Do you guys have any more questions? This must be from, this is for Rick's class.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
You're there. Go ahead.
So.
What? It's just him now. So.
Oh, okay. That if you mentioned that when you first went there, you looked also for like traces of dinosaurs, and so I don't know. Like I was just wondering if you did ever find any of that, and like how does that work? Like I don't know. I didn't know dinosaurs were in Madagascar.
Yeah, no, Madagascar had a lot of different dinosaur species, and there's actually many researchers doing a lot of work there. We did find dinosaur footprints, and so this would be in the limestone. There's basically theropod footprints. They're like 3-footed dinosaur prints sitting in the limestone. And so just providing evidence that which is really hard to find. It's hard to find dinosaur footprints. And this was in the area where I did the expedition for the Singi. But on to the west of us, there's lots of different species of dinosaurs that have been discovered. And so if you actually Google it, you can see all sorts of cool dinosaurs in the country. And there's some great work going out of Stony Brook. The name slips me, but if you look up Stony Brook's dinosaur research, they have a big project in Madagascar.
Okay, so our class just ended, and there, I think probably, does anybody have any more questions? You have his full and undivided attention. Or we want to do a huge thank you on 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, thanks for tuning in for this episode of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. I hope you enjoyed it.
Do you want to stay right now and ask him that?
Yeah, I'm here. You can get me.
Yeah, come on and just like sit down.
I'm just going to stop. I'll stop the broadcast. I just want to thank everyone who tuned in. And all the different viewers. I'm going to stop the broadcast now, but thanks everyone for tuning in.